Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon 101.14, Grounding the Whip. We're going to start today with a bit of homework. I'm going to ask you to go back into my videos and review the video on stalling the whip, or stall speed. And the actual fastest way to get there is go to my profile on FetLife. There'll be a link to an index page, and from the index page you can navigate through all of my previous videos. There's a concept that comes out of basic cracking or sport cracking called grounding the whip, and it has to do with a long whip. When you throw a long whip, you want the whip to start either straight out behind you or straight out in front of you. And that action is called grounding the whip. It links directly into Newton's first law of motion, of inertia, in that an object at rest will remain at rest until acted upon by a force, and that if it's in a straight line, the presumption is that it's going to continue in a straight line until acted on by an outside force. So if I ground that whip straight in front of me and I have it outside of the railroad tracks, then the presumption is when I throw it, it's going to continue in a straight line and stay outside of the railroad tracks, and it won't hit me. Hopefully it will hit its target. Okay, but this isn't about long whips, this is about short whips. So how do we move that concept of grounding a whip over to short whips? Let's look at the 4 techniques that we've been working with, and we've actually been grounding these whips all along. We just haven't talked about it in those terms. So when I'm throwing horizontal, I ground the whip. I ground the whip. The whip is straight. I keep it horizontal, and it travels in an arc, the same arc or the same direction that I move it in. So in a sense, I'm dynamically grounding it as I'm moving it. When I have it on a bow and arrow, in a static throw, it's grounded. That whip's in a straight line. It's outside the railroad tracks until I throw it. When it's over my shoulder, it's grounded. It's straight over my shoulder, straight down my back. I bring it straight off my shoulder. So that is 3 techniques for grounding a short whip. So when we are throwing the forward figure 8, if we let this whip lay all the way out in an arc, a geometric arc, it's traveling through the air and it's straight. I'm dynamically grounding it. And then as we bring that arc around on the forehand side and I stall it, the whole concept in stalling it is I'm trying to get that whip to lay out straight and be completely grounded before I flick it through to its target. So we're going to dynamically ground the whip outside the railroad tracks. I'm going to work with stall speed to ground that whip in the air. There's a moment in time when it's straight out behind me, right before I roll it through that rolling loop to end in a crack. So we're still grounding the whip with a short whip, but we're using it more as a metaphor or an analogy to visualize having that whip straight in front of me or straight behind me before I start to crack. That's it for Whips in the Dungeon today, and your keyword is signal whip. I would also accept dog signal whip.